Okay, hey guys, welcome. We're at the Bethel Park Library for the Alien Abduction and Other Dimensions panel, and I'll be managing the chat from my phone. So if you guys have questions, you can ask questions. And yeah, and I'm gonna move out of the way and let them get started. I'm gonna put this on full screen, and yeah, enjoy the show, guys.
Right. Worst case scenario.
Can everybody please just test your mics?
Instinct 1, 2. Touch.
Hello. Hi. Testing. All right, if we could just remember the others. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for coming out to the Bethel Park Public Library. I'm the moderator and producer of today's event, and my name is Christine Soltis of Solstice Night Sky Productions. First, I would like to extend a special thank you to the library and Rob Katzschaler for his tremendous help with these events. That's is Rob in here now? All right, everybody. I'd also like to extend a thank you to our very first panel sponsor, who is Jonathan Chippy, who just came in. Yes, that's him over there. And he is a local MUFON field investigator with a passion for the unknown. These panel events were held over 10 years ago at a different bookstore venue, and I see that some of you in the audience today were here back then, over 10 years ago. Could you please raise your hands? We got Tim. I know Tiffany is supposed to be coming. She probably didn't make it quite yet. But thank you so much for coming. Tim Gross used to be a panelist on these events as well. And he does have Rose Fest. He brought me a cool flyer. If everybody wants to check it out. Rose Fest is going to be next year, July 31st and August 1st of 2026. Okay, now you may remember that there was another panel event earlier this year in March 2025 that encompassed life on other planets, aliens, UFOs, drone technology, and artificial intelligence. Today, we will continue our trek beyond the stars to provide a deeper look into the actual workings of the universe. Today we shall discuss alien abduction stories, dimensions, and interplanetary beings. Such as the men and women in black, and the telepathic beings could be someone like Indrid Cole. We will also travel into the world of time travelers and the use of dimensions between all beings. It is also said that within 100 to 200 years, humankind itself will become interplanetary beings living and traveling between different planets. When researching, there was no definitive number of how many alien abduction stories have been reported or occurred. The state of California has the highest numbers of reported abductions, but quite frankly, because it is a larger state, it seems that would be a feasible assessment. For today's event, I do want to caution that alien abduction stories are prevalent and sometimes graphic or sensitive in nature, as are the stories that you may hear today. Today's panel consists of a group of dynamic individuals who will be sharing their knowledge and experiences today. You will see that part of this event is in person and part of the panel is under live stream, which you can see on the screen up above. You can actually see us up there, but that's a live stream through typical Skeptic podcast. We would also like to thank BPTV for coming to film today back there in the corner. If you are not familiar with how a panel works, it will be a series of questions, and each individual panelist has an opportunity to provide their own intelligent and creative response. We will also have time for audience questions, especially at the end. As mentioned, this panel is being live streamed by Robert Kalil right here of Typical Skeptic podcast. We also have two talented individuals on photography today, who are Ryan O'Shea over here and Kathleen Wilson. You will also see Brian Seach running around. He is the other half of, I always call it the F files, even though that's the name of their files. There's 2,000 files, from what I understand, of paranormal activities. So he's the other half with Terry Seach here. Please note that at the end of the panel, the panelists also have items for sale here. You'll see on these tables. So please stop by and grab some merchandise, pick up some business cards, things like that. Now, before we get started, our panelist, Fred Saluga, would like to introduce the steps of an abduction as he's learned through his own experiences investigating these incidents. Fred, this is Fred Saluga down here. We'll go ahead and we'll start with you. If you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then go ahead into those steps of the abduction.
I'm Fred. I got a little problem with my voice right here, so yeah, they're talking. The only thing I can say, I've been involved in this stuff for like 60 years. I've been investigating UFOs for probably 50 years. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, you investigated 5,000 cases yet? No, I did about 500 months. And I also run, I'm the state director for West Virginia, and the assistant state director in Pennsylvania, and assistant state director in Bethel. And I've done quite a bit of abduction cases in my day, but now that we have an ERP, we got a special unit done. Okay. So that's about it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. Did you want to go through the steps of the abduction?
Okay, so I mean, when you get old, man, you can't move your rear end hurts and your wrist hurts, and I God. Okay, anyhow. How many of you know what an abduction is? Never an abduction. Okay? A lot of people don't really know, so I'm gonna go over the whole thing real quick. It'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll go from there, okay? Okay, so the first thing is, it's called a capture. The abductee is forcibly taken from terrestrial surroundings to an apparent spaceship. Now, most people are abducted from their home, but the second is from the car. So how, why would you be abducted from a car? It's amazing there. Okay, the second part is examination and procedures. Invasive physiological and psychological procedures, and on occasions, stimulated behavioral situations, training, and testing for sexual liaisons. The third is a conference. The abductors communicate with the abductee or direct them to interact with specific individuals for some purpose. The fourth is the tour. The abductees are given a tour of their captor's vessel. So this is disputed by some researchers who consider this definition a confabulation of intent. When just barely being taken aboard a bound multiple ships. This is loss of time. Anyone here have loss of time? Me and another guy had loss of time here about a year ago. We down at Soltis. Did you ever go to Soltis?
Yeah.
Okay, Soltis is heavy with UFO activity. We've actually picked up radiation out. And there's actually been abductions down there. I've talked to Ohio News about that. So the loss of time, abductee often forgets most of their experience and as a result fears. Medical intervention or both. Return. The abductees return to Earth occasionally in a different location from where they were allegedly taken for new injuries and just shuttle clothing. This way, you wake up and you say, what the hell? And then theopathy or whatever, coinciding with the immediate return. Abductee may have a profound sense of love, a high or high. A mystical experience accompanied by a feeling of oneness with God, the universe, and their abductors. Whether this is the result of a metaphysical change, Stockholm syndrome, or paramedical tampering, it is often not scrutinized by the abductees at the time. And the last one is aftermath. The abductees often cope with the physiological, physical, and social effects of the experience. Secondly, how many of you ever heard of MyLabs? Okay, MyLab is military abduction. They want to physical styles. The military is actually abducting people and making them think that they've been abducted by UFOs, and they're using MK Ultra and other psychological warfare. And the CIA admitted to it, and then they said they didn't do it. We're feeling a lot of stuff going on that they don't know about. So, okay. So now I'll get to the list of them. So, I would like to thank Christine for having us here. You can see that this is wanted. People want this. And I think we should actually have it more often. And so I'm going to talk about, we're talking about good alien abductions and bad alien abductions, right? Well, I'm going to talk about the one that never came back. How many of you ever heard of human mutilation? There are cases out there where aliens pick people up and they find them and they're mutilated. They're just like a cattle mutilation. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But one of the most shocking cases involved an Air Force sergeant allegedly abducted by a saucer-like aircraft. The details are both grisly and strangely surgical. Corpses found under the open sky with their eyes plucked out, toes removed, private parts excised, and extracted with the utmost precision and leaving not a drop of blood. For some unknown reason, aliens love blood. They love drinking our blood. Reports of such unexplained mutilations carried out on both humans and animals have baffled investigators for decades, leading to speculation about whether the perpetrators might be otherwise worldly beings connected by biological experiments or personalities. While scores of reports have emerged from the U.S. Western and Midwestern states detailing mysterious bloodless animal mutilations, human cases have been far less common and often much sketchier in their documentation. It isn't that, it isn't reported. People don't report that. You tell somebody that you see a human being mutilated, it was an animal, or something like that, they don't take it for whatever it is. So in that Project Drug, 3.13.
Fred, I just want to stop you just for 1 second. Are you into the first question right now? Are you answering like your experience? If you don't mind, we're just going to go back a little bit. I was going to go through an introduction of the panelists, and then we'll come back to the question. Does that work for you? Yeah, because we haven't asked the question yet, so I don't want to confuse the audience right now. So we're just going to go ahead through our panelists. Tony, if you could just go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
I would like to say one more thing. If we could just take a minute and bow our heads for the one that didn't make it, and let it go with that. Thank you all. We're good.
Thank you, Fred.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm author, writer, researcher, Tony Lahona. For 35 years, I've been looking into folk legends, folklore, as well as high strangeness activities like UFO phenomenon. And I started off with near-death experiences, and I kind of went through a whole range of things and investigations. I've been accredited with a half a dozen books on the subject matter, public speaker, as you can see. I like to talk about these things and get to the bottom if I can sometimes, and other times I work more as an instrument for you to better understand the different pieces and complexities of these issues. It's my pleasure, my esteemed pleasure, Bethel Park Library and everyone here today. I'm glad to see that people still have an interest in these matters. I hope today will all find some new information together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. Okay, and then we have Daniel Hagman.
My name is Daniel Hegman. I am the founder and director of the Butler Organization for Research of the Unexplained, ORRU for short. I've had multiple UFO experiences, my whole family, throughout my lifetime. Possibly abduction. I've been told that I've been abducted, but I really don't want to go under regressive hypnosis to find out. I'm just kind of torn between half of me wants to, half of me does not. Navy veteran, former chief of police, have a background, extensive background in electronics and photography. And the main reason why I get into doing what I'm doing is because this stuff is real. This stuff exists, and we've been lied to all our lives. My sole reason for doing this is to bring the truth to the public. And the truth may be very frightening. We might not like what we find out, but I think we deserve and have the right to know.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. We're going to go ahead with Terry Seach.
Hi, my name is Terry Seach. I, along with my husband Brian, run two groups, Center for Unexplained Events, CUE, and Center for Cryptozoological Studies, CCS. I'm also a former MUFON state section director and field investigator. We've collected a lot of books and files and documents over the years, which Christine's previously said that we call our S-files. I have also been on various podcasts and several episodes of Small Town Monsters films and documentaries, as well as doing events and conferences. And we've also hosted, along with Dan, the Butler Paranormal Conference since its inception.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Aurora Swanhill.
My name is Aurora Swanhill. I am a psychic medium and sensitive. I've had many, many different experiences throughout my life. I have been a paranormal investigator and cryptid investigator for 28 years. For 13 of those years, I have been affiliated and worked with CUE, Center for Unexplained Events, CCS, Center for Cryptozoological Studies, and Truth PA, Paranormal Research Organization of Freedom PA, as the lead psychic medium. I have also collaborated with other research groups. I am an ordained minister through the Universal Life Church, a certified hypnotist, and a second degree in Reiki. And I have studied reincarnation and regressive hypnotherapy since I was 7 years old, so basically 51 years. Besides being a paranormal encrypted investigator, I am also a vampirologist and fairyologist, with 45 years of studying and researching both empiric and fairy lore. As a result, I have been interviewed on Chiller Chat Radio and the YouTube program String Theory of Everything. My experiences with aliens and alien abductions began when I was around 3 or 4 years old. And I have had many different experiences and encounters throughout my life with several types of aliens and otherworldly beings. As a psychic medium and sensitive, I do spirit communication, intuitive readings, tarot card readings, angel card readings, past life readings, and psychometry. I also perform house cleansings and blessings, and I have dedicated my life in helping both the living and deceased by using my gifts and abilities.
Thank you very much, Aurora. All right, now as you can see, we do have a qualified group of individuals here, and we're going to start out with what I'd like to say is hopefully a chilling bang. The first question for the panelists, we would start with Fred Saluga. Question 1, what is the scariest alien abduction story that you have either experienced or heard of? Please include any sensations with your answer, which could include sounds, scents, touch, or any other feeling that occurred.
All right, so I'm just going to go for this real quickly. In an abduction, they took the corpse, lover's corpse, that had been severely mutilated. His tongue had been cut out from the lower portion of his jaw, his eyes gouged out, his anus removed. The Air Force medical examination report pertains to the incident. The English allegedly reported work on the apparent surgical failure to remove the organ. In particular, the anus and the genitalia have been neatly extracted like a plug. Perhaps most puzzling was the fact that the body had been completely drained of blood, which surprisingly there was no vascular collapse usually associated with death by bleeding. We had a case here in Pennsylvania. I guess about 15, 20 years ago. Solstice. Anybody here with Solstice? I don't believe it was a UFO that did it, but allegedly Todd went up to the ridge on the St. Louis up Northumberland County in Pennsylvania. He went up to the ridge to look for deer. And he didn't come home for lunch, and his family got a search party to look for him. In 2 days, they didn't find him. And then one of the big things with this is normally when you're abducted, the place that you have searched before, that's where they'll find you at. And they found Todd not too far from his house. All right? So when I first found out about this, I think it was back in the 80s. Being an ex-police chief, I thought I had a little bit of cool, but I didn't have nothing. I got a hold of the police department up there, and they just told me more or less, excuse the language, I'm here to help. They wasn't talking to me. I talked to the district attorney, he refused to talk to me. I talked to the coroner, he refused to talk to me. I talked to the county commissioner, he refused to talk to me. And I got a hold of the undertaker. The only thing the undertaker would tell me was the family wanted the office closed. Now, there's been numerous freedom of information requests on this case, and nobody ever got anything. And again, I really don't believe that he was abducted by a UFO, but there's speculation. I mean, with all this non-information, something may have happened. And I think that's what we've got to look at. And this happens all the time. How many of you are familiar with 411 missing?
Missing one.
Yeah. 411 missing, dead for life. He's one who writes about the forest, national parks and that. They're having more and more people missing out of national parks on a daily basis. Dave believes that UFOs are actually taking these people. Dave says that you could have a person standing right here, talking to somebody, turn your head and they're gone. And then you find them 50 miles away. Either dead or alive, wherever you want to go. And what I really want to say here is, this stuff is happening. Like you said, this stuff is happening, and we got to look at it. When you go out in a park, when you go somewhere, try to have somebody with you at all times. Because we don't want you to be one of the victims of what we'll talk about one day again.
Now, Fred, I just had a quick question about that. Whenever this happens, is it more like something that occurs at night or during the day?
The majority of the abductions are at night.
How about people when they go into these forests or these parks? What would that, do they like get lost first, or how does that play out?
She's actually whether what time, like what plays out when they go into these forest things, like what time of day, what.
It could be any time of the day. They recently had a case where there was a bunch of people standing in line, and they turned around and they talked to somebody, turned around and got was gone. They found him about 6 hours later, 30 miles away from him.
Oh my goodness.
They have no idea how he got there. So there's stuff happening out there. Again, everybody who knows me knows I'm not a government. Then the FBI is interested in there.
So is there any particular park that we should avoid?
No, it's going to happen. I mean, everybody says, try to be with somebody all the time. At least or let somebody know where you're going to be at. Because it's like I say, when we went down to Saltport, we pulled Bigfoot research. The next thing you know, we got 3 hours missing time down there. I mean, it just came out of nowhere. I mean, it happened. So.
Okay,
we ever get a duck pulled?
Did you have something to say, Tony?
I just wanted to add real quickly, Christine, I know we have time to move here. The cases, I think what Fred is trying to press upon you ladies and gentlemen is, it would seem after a lot of these cases, there is no definitive common denominator. particular type of park more so than any other. So therefore, it's hard to make a determination or use something as a common denominator to say, okay, at this time of day, at this park, at this place, it's more likely than say this park way across and so on. So
Okay, certainly. Thank you very much. Now we're going to go ahead on to Tony. Do you need me to read the question again?
I shall do.
Okay, certainly. What is the scariest alien abduction story that you have either experienced or heard of? And you can please include any sort of sensations, that could be sound, sense, touch, or any other feeling.
Okay, thank you, Kristen.
Yeah.
Okay, the case I would like to use, and it's not a personal case, but a case that I came across a number of years ago. The date was actually June 5th, I believe, 1983, and it was a night that would be probably remembered quite some time for three ladies that were enjoying an evening out at Shrewsbury, Strasbourg, England. So with that, I'll go into the events that happened that night. There were three main, I should say, people who were involved in this. They are Vivian Hayward, Rosemary Lang, and the third young lady whose name I have to withhold because I could not obtain it because I guess she had a gag request put on. She didn't want to be identified. So I'm going to take you to that place, and I'll have this also on my table, folks. I realize you probably won't be able to see the graphic, but it basically shows the route that these ladies took that evening, and then what occurred on the highway. Again, like Mr. Saluda had mentioned, there was a 3-hour lapse in time when this event took place to them. Okay. I will try to keep it short. I'll try to keep it clean. I don't want to get too graphic. I understand.
Oh, we're okay with graphic.
Oh.
I want to scare everyone, no?
You don't want to do that. You don't want me to open up. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. So Rosemary, Valerie, and Vivian had started out on the night of companionship and fun at a diner cafe in Shrewsbury. It was called the Shamrock Cafe, by the way. It was a night out like any other. As the three concluded their evening and stepped into their automobile, Rosemary had felt something was amiss. The three ladies left and got on the A5. They were traveling eastward, in an eastward direction towards Wellington. As they were approaching there, I believe they got to an interstate or overpass, which is designated as B4394. Okay. And again, at this point, the ladies claimed that they became uneasy in the car, and one of the passengers had noticed that there were some odd lights in the sky. Again, I'll refer, I know you can't see this, but you can stop by my table. You saw something that looked kind of circular in its lights. So she said, my attention was being drawn to these lights in the sky above us. I couldn't take my eyes away from these odd lights. They were strange in their configuration, said Vivian. Soon the other occupants of the vehicle did as well notice the strange lights that Vivian had mentioned. Curiosity started to slowly turn, though, into something much darker. She goes on to state, I later recalled the great size of this thing, circular in nature, and the lights kept pulsating, like Rosemary. I was getting a very strange and uncomfortable feeling that was overcoming me. It would be at this point their enjoyable evening turned into an unimaginable night. Soon the craft would be directly above the car and keeping in pace with our speed. At this, the occupants of the car began to feel a sense of nauseousness, as if they were starting to black out. One of them recalls through regression therapy that it felt like almost a light had captured or encompassed the entire vehicle which we occupied. What would happen next is kind of nothing short of astonishing according to these witnesses. Description. Rosemary's friend, Vivian Hayward, a former nurse, lays under hypnosis the following disturbing events, much like Dan had mentioned, hypnosis regression. I'm in the car now. I feel like I'm floating. She says, I'm being drawn up and the car feels like it's being taken up. At this, she begins to sob uncontrollably during the regression. She then goes on to add, I cannot see the road anymore. In fact, I can't even see what's around us. I don't know if it's a cloud. At this, she screams out, oh Lord, I'm on my own. I can see something. I don't know if it's a machine or what. It's from, my God, I'm looking through the window, I think, of the car. I'm looking through her, and she laughs. She comes again through the regression. Vivian goes on to recount what happens next. It's like the doors are metallic or something. They are so bloody large. What are they? My God, they're like a beam. They seem to grapple at me. Nowhere can I see my friends. She starts to plead, basically, to be free. I'm frozen. I can't move. It's like they're in my head. She starts shaking, trying to recant what happened. They're telling me not to be afraid, but I am terrified. They released a grip on me that I cannot move. Oh God, no, what are you doing? She cries out from the depression. I'm laying there on my back. There's at least 4 of them. My God, they're in. They're bringing something over me, scanning my body. I just want to go home. I want to get the hell out of here. Please, she's begging. At this point, I'm going to go to Rosemary's recounting of her experience. At first, they seemed friendly and they didn't know what to expect. Perhaps they were about 4 to 5 foot high, according to her recount. They have deep set dark eyes and very thin arms. It's like I smell this dank smell. And then she blacks during her regression and comes up screaming, no, please stay away from me. I don't want to be touched. She starts sobbing, oh God, I'm so cold, please, I don't want to be here. She breaks off. It would seem like they were dressed in a dark robe, according to her. I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm assuming she means something. They're paraphrasing. The woman was fairly pertinent. The same voice thinking in my head. They're being talked to somehow telepathically, according to the witness. As the hypnosis regression is carried out, the women begin to explain what happened after they were given a pelvic examination. Quite possibly, samples were taken at times, according to the 3 different ladies. They blacked out and became unconscious again at this. In the next segment of the regression, the 3 individuals were waking up, becoming conscious in their car, which is now much closer to their destination. It's also important to note at this point, they begin to realize something else is very wrong. At that, almost 3 hours of time had been lost. That is to say, 3 hours from the time when they first saw the strange lights and craft above the car to the time they were returned to the vehicle. So I feel it also important to note that while under the regression therapy, all 3 victims described in great detail the same process. In fact, clipping, which again I'm not, that was Drew at the time, states that the women that were put under the regression, they were done so, of course, separately. But ironically, each one had relayed the same information as well as provided rudimentary illustrations of the crafts. All 3 experienced the same thing, although they were all 3 eyes.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you very much. I just know now that I don't ever want to go through the regression. Now, after they go through that regression, are they able to remember that situation? Or is this just something that's documented by like a therapist?
To answer your question fully, Christine, it would be possibly both. It depends upon the type of progression they go through, of course, and then it depends upon the doctor, if you will, or psychologist, taking a look at the matter itself. There are different cases. I'm sure the most famous, everybody in here probably heard of Betty and Barney Hill. They went through a regression process as well. You know, for most of these people, they began to understand, and I can truly understand what Mr. Hagman here says. I'm kind of on the fence about it. Sometimes it does help the individual. Sometimes it can, in rare cases, make things work.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you.
Okay, Daniel, do you need me to read the question?
No, that's not necessary. For me, scariest alien abduction story that I've heard, I would have to say the Betty and Barney Hill incident. That's really what sparked my interest in the UFO phenomena. Like I previously stated, I've had many personal experiences, possibly including alien abduction. I've had multiple UFO sightings in my lifetime, as well as my entire family. But the Betty and Barney Hill incident, that's a case that has never been disproven till this day. It's a abduction incident that happened in 1961. It was the first publicized alien abduction case in the United States. Their story was terrifying because of the couple's description of the beings that were pursuing them in the silent craft. They experienced missing time as well as many abductees. Some do not recall unless they go under regressive hypnosis. Then they start to have memory flashes and they start to recall things. And like Tony just stated, sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it can be more harmful than good. Both Betty and Barney stated that they underwent horrific medical experimentation. While under hypnosis, they revealed vivid, disturbing memories that included the beings, the aliens' origins. Betty communicated with a few of the abductors. She asked them, "Where are you from?" And they showed her a star chart. And there was a book that she picked up, and they allowed her to look at it. She wanted to keep it, but they would not allow her to take it. She started to be moved toward the entrance of the UFO, and I guess the main alien being reached out and took the book from her. Both Betty and Barney, under regressive hypnosis, they talked about their terrifying experience. And like I stated previously, this stuff is real. I know I've had people say, "Oh, I've never seen a UFO. Gee, I wished I would see one." And I'm quick to tell them, one must be careful what he or she wishes for. You might not like the end results. And hopefully we're in an era of disclosure. And hopefully in our lifetime, the full truth will be known. We have military personnel, government personnel, against their oath of secrecy, are now starting to come forward and reveal what they've seen. So hopefully in our lifetime, we'll know the full scope of it.
Well, thank you, Daniel. Now, whenever these individuals go under that regression, do they remember this after that? I mean, I think we have something that, I might have inquired about before, but.
They have flashbacks, it's they know that something transpired. And of course they're going over it through their mind process, and they start to have vivid memories. Apparently or supposedly the abductees, their they go through a process where their mind is wiped clean. How many of you are familiar with the Men in Black series, where they take and they hold what looks like a pen up and looky here, and they flash it, and their memory is gone. Something similar to that. But again, it's real, and it's happening daily somewhere on this planet.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move on to Terry. Terry, do you need me to read the question for you?
No, thank you. I myself have not been abducted as far as I know, but I do personally know people who have been, the ones being on this panel, Fred, Dan, and Aurora. And my husband and I did meet on several occasions, Travis Walton, his story, Fire in the Sky. But as a teenager, I did have an experience that I can't totally explain or understand, but right before this panel started, I did get an answer. A little background, me and my sister shared a bedroom, and we always slept with our bedroom door closed, so it was complete darkness in our room. There was no night light, no lights whatsoever. One night, a dark hooded figure walked through the door, did not open the door, it walked through the door, came into the room. My bed was underneath the front window. Our bedroom was above the garage, so our window was essentially like a second story window. The driveway was below. This figure came towards my bed, went over my bed and out the window. I can't explain what or who it was. I felt the presence was a male figure. And I didn't talk about this to anybody till decades later. I asked who we knew, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, because she researched and studied shadow people. I asked her about it. She didn't have an answer for me. I just know it was terrifying, and it's always stayed with me. But the scariest abduction story that I read about and saw the film was Communion. I don't know if everybody remembers Communion.
I know people who will not watch that.
Yeah, that was scary to watch. And then we also know Travis Walton's story. That was probably the second scariest abduction story.
Now, I do have a quick question about your personal experience. Did this being touch you at all?
No, not that I remember. I just remember it coming through the door, walking towards my bed and going over. Like, I didn't see any facial features. It seemed to glide or float, and it went over me and out the window.
And did your sister report any issues?
No, she was asleep, and I never even talked to her about it. So,
Was there anything like any sort of strange smells with it or anything of that nature?
not that I remember.
Okay.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
I'm sure you all have heard different abduction stories. The abductees say, I floated up through the ceiling. I floated out through the wall. The beings came in through the wall, came in through the window. Every living being is energy. That wall is energy. That window is energy. It's a frequency. And if you can take and you can align your frequency with the frequency of that wall, you can pass right through it as though it's not even there. And that is how these beings are able to go through walls, windows, and ceilings. And they align your frequency so they can take you and float you right through the ceiling, the wall, floor, whatever the case may be.
Thank you for that. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to Aurora. Do you need me to read the question?
No.
No, thank you.
I have two personal accounts, one as an abduction and one as a meeting with a different species. The first account, it took me many years not to fear anything that had to do with aliens and alien abductions. My mother was an avid reader and she studied a lot of UFOs, aliens, and alien abductions. Throughout her life, she had her own experiences. My father did as well. And as a result, she was very curious about otherworldly beings from other planetary systems. And because of her interest and experiences, I remember us watching a movie, Communion, that was based upon the witch driver's experiences. This movie absolutely horrified me. And because of this movie, I still to this day hate Christopher Walken. It wasn't until much later that I came to understand why I was so fearful and why the movie Communion upset me so greatly. I have been abducted for the majority of my lifetime. It began when I was a small child. I would say around the ages of 3 or 4 years old. But throughout all of those abductions, I was never fearful until the night it happened to both my son and I. And I feel that the reason why this was so terrifying was because it was about my son, not so much about myself, but my son. The abduction occurred in early March 2009. My son had recently turned 4 years old. We had just settled down into bed and I had finally gotten him to sleep. As he lay beside me gently snoring, I was just starting to relax when I heard it. I knew instantly what the sound meant. A being emerged into the bedroom. He was a small mantis-like being, and he carried some type of lantern-like object in his appendage. I was terrified, not for myself, but for my son. I laid there unable to do anything. As the being stood there, he seemed to walk through my bedroom, and as he did so, a huge black dome came down surrounding my son and I. That's the last thing I remembered until I woke up several hours later feeling disoriented. Another different terrifying encounter happened to me in 1993. A friend of mine set up a reading party. At the time, I was going through several difficult life changes and I was hoping for some guidance and answers. It's difficult when you're yourself a reader to read oneself. You don't always get clear answers. I went in to have my reading done, and the woman was thin. I remember her, she was a thin woman, about 5'6", and she had short, cropped, blonde hair. I was immediately very uncomfortable in her presence. Instead of giving me a reading, she proceeded to belittle me, mocking me, and criticizing me. And keep in mind, I never met her before. She didn't know anything about me. As I sat there stunned, listening to her berate me, the woman's face began to change. Her face began to elongate and shift. Her eyes became snake-like slits, and her tongue escaped her mouth like a snake's. It was long, thin, and forked. I was terrified of what I was both seeing and experiencing. She was a reptilian. It took me several weeks to recover from the encounter and for myself to realize that she was trying to stop me from using and progressing with my gifts and abilities.
Oh, thank you so much. Actually, that freaked me out a little bit because I had a dream about a woman with short blonde hair, and she was an alien. She actually, in the dream, was very social, but like you would hang out with her, but at any time she would just transform into this creature that would basically eat you. So for me, that was like, whoa, that sounds like the lady that I had a dream about. Actually, that is interesting. I just want to know about that black dome in your first experience. How did that travel down? Was it going through like the roof?
Yes, it was like, I lived in a Cape Cod house at the time. So it was set up away from like it was a tall house. I remember seeing a being come through, and it was almost like, the only way I can describe it, it's like a huge dome. It just came down around, and as it came down around, it was like he went through the wall and like literally sealed it, and we were sucked up.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, now we're going to go into the next question, and we are going to start in reverse order. So what I like to do is I like to switch the order of the panelists, so we're not starting with the same person each time. So we are going to start with Aurora again. And this next question is the opposite of the first one. What is the softest or gentlest alien abduction story that you have either experienced or heard of? This experience may be more of a welcoming feeling for the experiencer. Please include any sensations with your answer, which could include sounds, scents, touch, or any other feeling that occurred.
Once again, I have two examples. When I was a small child, my abductions, according to my memory, began, like I stated, between the ages of 3 and 4 years old. I would be laying in my bed. We lived in like a flat, just a normal house, like ground level. I would be laying in my bed when I began to hear a whirring, metallic humming sound. Then I would feel like I was in a pressurized dome before everything turned dark. I have fleeting memories of being on board some type of ship. I would often be either laying down or sitting up on a large silver-like table. And I remember there were several different types of beings who were there with me, but there are two that I remember the most. There was a male and a female. They were Nordic elf-like beings. They were both tall and slender with long blonde white hair, long faces with slightly slanted eyes and elf-like ears. The male would wear blue or silver tunics with pants, and the female almost always wore a flowing dress. I always felt a sense of warmth, deep love, and caring from each of them, but especially from the female. I felt safe and warm, and I rarely ever remember being afraid. They were always gentle and kind to me. I do remember others being there, but those two stand out to me the most. It was always a strange sensation when I was deported back into my bedroom. The best way I could describe it, and I would try to tell my mother this when I was younger, the best way I could describe it is if you remember the scene from The Wizard of Oz where the house is just twirling around, like from a tornado. I remember once again a whirring metallic sound accompanied by a long yellow-white beam. My bedroom would swirl around me as my bed spun and spun around the room until it landed with a thud with me sitting up. Slowly the sensation would evaporate and I knew I was back home. In the morning, like I just stated, I would often try to tell my mom what happened, but I'm not sure if she truly understood my childlike descriptions. Later in life, I was regressed by a very good friend of mine, Michael Weir. He was a hypnotherapist, and for a brief time, he was part of MUFON, who worked with them. Through my regression, I gained more clarity concerning my abductions and encounters, and I learned that both my parents had been abducted and that it stemmed from one of my grandfathers.
Okay, well, thank you. Oh, you're still one more. Oh, okay, sorry.
This is most recent. I've had other ones since then, but no, this is a different one. I apologize. There's two different. During the late summer of 1995, I had an encounter with a mantis alien. I woke up in the middle of the night, jolted by an energy shift in my bedroom. I always have a nightlight on, so because I want to know who's in my room. I've woken up to having spirits and what have you in my room at different times. Being a psychic medium sensitive, I'm always aware of energy around me. As I opened my eyes, standing at the foot of my bed, I could see a tall, slim mantis figure staring at me. I immediately asked him telepathically, "What do you want?" His large eyes blinked in shock as he realized that I could see him, and at that moment he disappeared. A few nights later, I woke up again, only this time the mantis alien was standing on the lower left side of my bed. He was dressed in a long white robe. I felt a sense of both wisdom and curiosity from him. He seemed to be intently studying me. Telepathically again, I asked him, "What do you want?" He continued studying and staring at me, seemingly perplexed. He then asked me telepathically, "You can see me?" I responded, "Yes." He then asked, "And you can hear me?" I responded, "Yes." Everything was telepathic. Then I asked him once again, "What do you want?" I had the sense that he was truly surprised by both my awareness, my ability to see and communicate with him telepathically. He continued to stare at me for a few more moments before he disappeared. I received the impression that I was to be further watched and studied. During these encounters, I was never afraid, only curious myself as to why he was there. Since those encounters, I have periodically felt his presence or have seen him. This especially occurs prior to an abduction. In my experience, I often feel as if he's a grandfatherly-like figure who needs to periodically check in to see my progression of abilities. And another one that recently happened, this was September 2024. Another encounter occurred in August, it was August 2024, where I had 6 different alien beings who appeared. I think it was August or like beginning of September, I'm not quite sure, month. But I had alien beings who appeared in my bedroom, in which Mantis was one of them. The other aliens included my 2 Nordic elf-like beings, a smaller being resembling a dwarf, a reptilian, as well as it was a bright little pink ball. I took it as like a fairy-like individual. I woke up to their dismay, to them all standing in my bedroom. My clear impression was they had all been discussing my particular case and how very impressed they were with my progress. I could telepathically hear their voices as they continued to study me. Unfortunately, they put me back under, and later when I woke up, I felt I had either lost time or time itself had stood still.
Okay, thank you so much for that. It seems like your first experiences that you had mentioned there was again that dome sensation, like the pressurized kind of
Yes,
feeling,
yes.
of being in the Capitol. Okay, and then it must be, if you just tell us how it feels to, having like an ability that we may not understand, like a psychic ability. How does it feel to, if you are randomly seeing a spirit or a alien kind of creature? How does that feel for you? Is that like a terrifying experience, or?
As a child, when I was growing up, I was very grateful because my mother was very well read and she did delve into the paranormal and such. And there were, took me many years to understand and control it. And I had some really interesting experiences, very terrifying though. There were some very terrifying as a child. Now I've just grown accustomed to it. It's not as terrifying. It's not as frightening. I'm more accepting of it. It's just like having somebody just appear in a room. Like, oh, okay, there's somebody else there. It's to me, it's like how does somebody describe how they breathe?
All right, and then lastly, the telepathic portion, is that something that was trained, or is it just something that that you worked on? Is that like an ability that you had to work on, or is it just something that appears when another being appears?
I would say that it is a natural ability that I have. I don't often use it with others because majority of people don't have that. It's more natural when there's other beings, whether they're alien, Bigfoot, what have you. In my experience in talking and having a telepathic conversation.
Okay, thank you. And then it looks like there was a mixture. It was different types of species that were there at the same time. What would cause such a group to get together like that?
That is something that I've yet to try to figure out why. I just feel that they're there. I was actually quite surprised by the different types that were there that evening.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Now, Terry, I'm going to go ahead and move on to you. Do you need me to repeat that question? No. Thank you.
Again, not having been abducted myself, I've read about many abduction stories, and to say it's the softest or nicest one is from Coevolution. This gentleman, Alec Newald, is from New Zealand, and he wrote this book to understand what happened to him. He claims that he was abducted by aliens for 10 days in 1989, during which he experienced extraordinary events and encounters with extraterrestrial beings. So this happened in February of '89. He was a resident of Rotorua, New Zealand. He embarked on a routine 3-hour drive to Auckland. However, this ordinary journey turned into a 10-day mystery. And upon arriving in Auckland, Alex was disoriented and unable to recall where he had been during his absence. He returned home physically exhausted, suffering from headaches and confusion, which baffled his family and authorities. He recounted during his drive he felt an overwhelming sensation as if a heavy weight had pressed down on him, rendering him unable to control his vehicle. He then found himself in a bright, otherworldly space where he encountered several alien beings. These entities communicated with him telepathically, sharing his insights about their advanced civilization and technology. Now, you might think, well, this is an abduction story. Why isn't this scary? He talks about 2 Earths. They tell him of a second Earth or an Earth-like planet called Haven, where people can evolve. I don't want to get into this right now because that's part of my question. Sorry. But he learned about their technology, them using organic consciousness rather than traditional machinery, and shown a world powered by clean energy and advanced materials, which he believed could hold the key to interstellar travel. He faced skepticism and even alleged government interference, claiming that his apartment was broken into and that he was visited by scientists questioning him about his experience. And to make sense of all this, he authored his book, where he detailed his abduction and the knowledge he gained from the extraterrestrial beings. It's been a while since I read this book, and doing this research for this panel, I think I'm gonna go back and read it again.
Certainly, that looks like a good book. Now, I just had a quick question about this other Earth. Like, are we talking about something where the same people are there, but like different? That was a theory that was kind of in like Fringe, like if you watch some of the sci-fi series like Fringe.
Yeah, once we get into that other question, I'll go and
Okay.
explain that one.
Okay, certainly, I won't pry anymore then. All right, we're gonna go ahead on to Daniel.
I have a couple personal experiences I can share. I call them virtual dreams. We all dream. They're dreams that when you wake up, you say, wow, it just seemed like they were so real. You get up to go get a drink of water or go to the bathroom. You go back to bed, and as soon as your head hits the pillow, you drop back off into a deep sleep, and that dream picks right up where it left off without skipping a beat. I've had reoccurring dreams all my life. I still have them today. I get goosebumps just even recalling it. But one of the dreams I have is I'm being drawn toward a bright white piercing light. So piercing you can't even look into it. There's a black void and it's spinning, and you're being drawn into this light. And I'm fighting with every ounce of strength I possibly can. And when I wake up, it's like I just get out of the shower with all my clothes on. I'm soaking wet. The bed's wet from perspiration. Another dream that I have, I'm on a slightly elevated metal table, feet toward the floor. And I can only move my head a little bit, and I can move my eyes. The rest of my body is like it's paralyzed. And I'm looking at a massive control panel and gauges. And there are all these beings, 3-4 foot tall, and they're manipulating these gauges. And I'm screaming at them with all my being. And it's like they literally can't hear me. And again, I will wake up and I'm soaking wet like I stepped out of the shower with my clothes on. And those are dreams that I've had all throughout my childhood. I still have today. I also have had multiple dreams that I can't talk about. I've tried to talk with the co-director of our group. She's an abductee, and it's even hard to talk to her. The very people you think you can talk to, your family, and I can't even talk to them about it. But most well-known alien abduction stories, of course, the Betty and Barney Hill incident and the Travis Walton case. Those are two big ones. And those abduction cases are characterized by trauma, fear, intrusive medical examinations. They're not all that way. Early history, UFO sightings and encounters that happened particularly between the years of 1950 and 1960s. Many of those individuals that reported abduction encounters, they experienced pleasant abductions. They were spiritual, fulfilling, and tended to shift toward later on, it tended to shift toward more forcible and traumatic narratives as far as reports of alien abductions.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I just had a quick question. So it looks like you said that you can't talk to these individuals about it. Is that something like physical where when you start to talk about it, you can't? Or is it just that they won't understand what you have to say?
I had an incident where trying to talk to my family about these things, and they literally thought I was crazy. I found out that, my mother was going to have me, I guess the proper term is institutionalized. They literally thought that I was nuts. Different things that I would recite to my parents, I saw this, or I had this happen. And it was almost like as if they didn't want to hear it. But, some sightings that I had witnessed, I'd sit at the supper table, I'd bring it up to my family members, and then just immediately change the subject or totally dismiss it. But then here, there were reports that showed up in the local newspaper, front page news of me before the article ever even hit the paper. I'm telling my parents, and my mother, she told my sister, go get the newspaper. I want to show your brother something. And, these things that I recited prior to them being published, they didn't think it was so crazy anymore.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Tony, would you like for me to read you the question?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, first, I took us folks over towards England in our my first question, which was more darker experience for the individuals who suffered the experience. In this question here, this is more, I feel more of a lighter feeling to it. I'm going to take us, of all places, back to the 1950s in central France, where this encounter took place. It was in the mid-50s, September. I'm first going to take us to Le Mans, France. And I would like you to just keep in the back of your mind what I'm going to read you this event that happened. And the reason why I'm going to start kind of in the middle of this story and go forward is there's two main individuals. And ironically, these two seemingly unseparated events have a way of validating this event that night. So Le Mans, France, it's September 10th. It's shortly, I believe, after 8:33 in the evening. The inhabitants of Le Mans saw in the sky a reddish disk that discharged a blue trail. And a side note that I've heard that before with other cases. It was flying from east to west in its direction. Among some of the witnesses was a young 30-year-old young man, Mr. George Fougère. And he was questioned by the police authorities, who calmly took the man's account of that which unfolded in the sky above him. The encounter started with someone in another town earlier that day. We're going to get to that in just a moment. Now, I want to take us to this little town of Mossour. It is now 8:30 in the evening, 3 minutes early. The person in question is one Antoine Mazard. He is a farmer by occupation. And this is kind of the scenario that sets up next. Okay. He is walking Mr. Mazard, if you will, around 8:30 at night. He decided to return home after his day's work. He goes to throw his pitchfork over his shoulder, and he took a path that leads back from Hamlet to his home. According to him, it's approximately a 15-minute walk. Upon doing so, the path kind of twists between two hedgerows in a wild, hilly countryside, which he has to traverse. While walking through a small wood, he puts down the pitchfork in order to roll a cigarette. This test will come a minute or two, after which he puts his pitchfork back on his shoulder and starts out all over again on his trip. Now, according to Ms. Mazad, it only takes a few steps, he said, when in the beginning, he finds himself face to face with this strange looking being or entity dressed in what he describes the most peculiar way. He was of medium height, according to Masad, and was wearing a sort of helmet apparatus without earpieces. Masad goes on to describe it similar to almost like a motorcycle helmet. Now, according to Mr. Masad, he decides perhaps I need to try to defend myself, scare this thing off, but he himself was pretty frightened. He was scared stiff, according to him. So he goes on to explain that this being begins to express all kinds of hand gestures towards him. Now, after a few moments of this that transpires between them in these arm gestures, he decides, Masad, he decides that this entity isn't of a menacing nature, and he begins to step toward him, wishing he didn't, but he does. Now, Masad in his mind is thinking, perhaps this is someone dressed up, because again, folks, he's a man of the earth, he's a farmer. He is not a person who probably talks or deals with anything of this type of nature, especially in 1953 Central France. As he continues to walk slowly, making strange gestures back at the individual, he gets very daring, and with his right hand and the pitchfork still sturdy in his right hand, he decides to put his left hand forward. What daring, isn't it? So, at that, Masad then says, this being grabs him roughly, brutally, by the arm, shaking his arm real hard, and then takes his head and plants his helmet head with that of Masad. Now, I don't know if I do that scene justice, but in your head, if you could imagine a farmer and somebody wearing a helmet of some sort.
Like a predator almost.
Well, I'm sure it would be bizarre if anything else. So, at this point, he feels himself, Masad, and this other individual somehow end up inside of this, for lack of a better word, trap. He says in his description, it felt very mechanical or full. It was nothing like I understood before in my life. It's almost as if you were trying to show me or display something, but I didn't understand what he was trying to do. At this, I did feel sick, and at that, I was suddenly back outside. Now, at this anticlimactic, there was a whizzing or whirling sound, and this apparatus that was gone. Now, Masad begins his trek back to the property. So, upon doing so, he encounters, of course, his wife, Madame Mazad, and she says to him, you look like you've seen a ghost. What is wrong with you? Because this is a very honest, tactful, robust gentleman, very large, and he's shaken and is beside himself. So she's saying to him, what is going on with you? What's wrong? He then relays this episode to her, after which, of course, like most, I don't know if I'm going to say abductee at this point, but at most who encounter this, he's like, do not tell anyone in this town, because that's probably what a husband would do to a spouse, saying, I forbid you, don't tell anybody, I don't want to look strange to others, okay, please. So, of course, Madame, being his wife, 35 years or so, the first thing she goes and does is tell all her girlfriends in the town, and then she reports it to the local news and one salesman who was a door-to-door salesman. But that was it. That was it. Okay. So now, I want to now go to what happens next. Imagine this. The chancellor is notified, and the chancellor there in France is kind of like our FBI. He brings the authorities to the town of Pittsburgh, upon which they pull poor Mr. Mazar to the front, question him intensely of this evening, upon which Mazar answers fully all their questions. Now, of course, the director there, he doesn't want to take any action. This is a good, taciturn, honest, hardworking farmer. He has never made up stories before. He hasn't done anything really wrong by the town. So he is just like, well, we're going to let this go, but I'm just very surprised at you. Now, poor Mr. Mazar, he is just distraught over this because it's his pride, it's his name, his family name. Now, this, folks, is what happens in conclusion. So the Bureau of General Information Police, they place him, not on any type of arrest or anything, but they tell him, you better not say anything more about this matter. Let's just let it drop. Well, this is what happens next. And this is why I wanted to add this at the end. As time goes on, his story kind of fades a little bit, but the police, as well as the director, get reports on September 10th from another city just eastward. And guess what, folks? That young gentleman, that 30-year-old young man that was just living in Limoges, which is a little westward of the other town, they found that report. So in that, the director then allowed this story to be printed and cleared Mr. Mazar's name of any wrongdoing. They didn't want to hurt his activity or his good name in any way. So in that way, I think that was a pretty peaceful encounter, if that's all to be believed. But furthermore, I think they really enjoyed the fact that they could collaborate at least every two separate events that would correlate. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you so much. Now, I do know at the beginning of that, you had mentioned a blue streak, and you had mentioned having heard of that before. Do you just want to elaborate on what you meant by that?
There have been other cases of which there are blue streaks, blue lights, pulsating blue lights, orbs, all kinds of things. But the blue streak and the blue light, it's one of those things, ladies and gentlemen, that seem to show up in different reports. One of the things that I find fascinating about this peaceful encounter is also the fact he goes aboard, he mentions this smell of dank or a smell of ozone or a smell of something burned. This is another criteria sometimes we see in these things over and over. The last thing I'll say before handing it over is, again, this was in mid-1950s. I believe it was 1953 or 1954. We're going to see something play out again and again. And in my book, UFOs Across Pennsylvania, the cases that I looked into, there are some things that kind of stand out when you're investigating something again and again. And one of the things that stands out most to me is in the 50s, these things were a little different. The atmosphere was a little different. And by atmosphere, I just mean these people had experiences that didn't seem to have all kinds of baggage or all kinds of problems. In the 1960s, in the second wave, the second flap of these activities, we're going to see slight changes to this. By the 1973, which was one of the highest years of activity that I've been told time in and time again from others, is that this behavior changes totally. Things get much darker. The way in which the the unwilling occupants are treated also becomes a little bit darker. And by that, I mean a little bit more violent, a little bit more rough. So just a side note. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that. Fred, did you want me to read the question to you? Thank you.
Okay. This is gonna be short. Really. Okay, this is a case I investigated with Freeform about 10 years ago, which is really interesting. You hear me? Okay. Girl named Geraldine, she said when she struggled through several miscarriages, she claimed that there was much more to her. Every time she said the baby was missing and she came to understand that her babies were being taken from her by aliens. She recounts how she was abducted 8 times, and pursuing one of those times, she was taken to meet children that she believed were the babies that was harvested from her. She described them. They are not all white human. They have great thin skin, a much bigger head, 9 eyes that are so deep and profound and so complex. What I recognized by reading the child, it was actually my child. She believed that her experiences go back to a deal was made by the president, made with the aliens back in the 50s. The aliens were allowed to do a certain amount of abductions and breeding and hybrids for 100% part of it. Her Instagram says that she identified as a hybrid mother and continues to explore the interdimensional contact. She reports that these were great experiences and that she learned a lot from them. We had, like he said, back in the 50s and 60s, which was totally different world. 70s started everything really going bad. And she said she really loved it.
So was she happy to have this kind of like hybrid experience?
She happy to have this type of hybrid
Yeah,
experience.
she said it was a great experience. She learned a lot from it.
All right, now I'm going to go ahead into the next question, and we're going to reverse order again for this one. So we all start with Fred. We're going to move into dimensions. For any individuals who are not familiar with dimensions, many may think that aliens or interplanetary beings travel solely on a spaceship from planet to planet. However, there are theories involving dimensions, which would be a faster route of travel. Today, we will elaborate on those theories of dimensions and what it means to travel through them. Okay, and for our next question, Brad, we'll start with Brad again. I would like for you to please describe your own impression of what a dimension is. You can begin by describing what it is and how entry or where access is gained to a dimension.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, to be honest with you, I have no idea what the damn dimension is. That's my, whatever you want to call it. I know it has something to do with out there, with different dimensions. We talk about ultra-terrestrial, we talk about whatever the whole thing is. But there's no scientific basis for cryptid or interdimensional travel. But the theory suggests that they could travel by exploring existing portals and rights in reality, inhabiting a parallel dimension or manifesting through unusual natural phenomena or specific magical means, such as the 5th dimension being slipped into our 3D world. Okay, theories, portals and light. Some theories propose that the remote forest areas might contain portals or dimensional rifts, allowing beings like Bigfoot to pass between our worlds. And we all know the Bigfoot. How many believe in Bigfoot? You all know that Bigfoot is an dimension. He rode on an animal.
Yeah.
Parallel dimensions. Cryptids could be beings from another dimension that can slip in and out of waters. Often appearing when gateways open between reality. Higher dimensions. Another idea suggests cryptids might be the 4th or 5th dimensional beings that exist in our 3D world. They're gradually unseen until they manifest or shift into reality. Magical or supernatural means. In some fictional contexts, interdimensional travel can be achieved through magical means such as angels using their wings and creating spectral items and spots on reality. Some sources suggest that creatures might exist around fence posts in areas where the fabric of reality is weaker, leading to increased sightings of cryptids and other creature phenomena. And I really found this to be very interesting. What if we live with people's other dimensions? Right? I read a comment on this earlier today that made me think about this question, and it makes sense. To be clear, I am not a skeptic. I believe the paranormal, but I just have a thought. What if hauntings are aren't really hauntings, but the reality of people in other dimensions? So we are living with paranormal entities, but rather we live in the same house with someone in a parallel universe. And our paranormal encounters are just glitches in the matrix where we can briefly communicate with these others in the universe. It makes sense that having our encounter isn't a ghost, but an alternative version of another person living in a different reality in the same house and where our universe aligns for mere seconds so that we can experience these things.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Fred. We're gonna go ahead and move on to Tony. Tony, do you need for me to repeat the question?
No, that's,
Okay, thank you.
this is a tough one for me, ladies and gentlemen. The reason being why is most of the things that I do related to paranormal folklore, things of that nature, by my tendency, I look or investigate as many of these other folks do. So I try to base things on things that I know or feel most familiar with. Now, I could sit here and probably bore you poor folks to tears talking about dimensional space, and I could probably go through all kinds of mathematical formulas, physics, so on and so forth. I'm going to spare you that thing, okay? I'm going to try to make this question pretty quick for me, and I'll probably save you some time anyway. So a dimensional space in mathematics or physics, I'm going to first approach this way. Just hang in there with me. It's a way of describing the different directions of coordinates in which objects can exist or sometimes move. It's a mathematical concept used to understand and visualize position, movement of things in our world. In addition to this, in our everyday world, we often use three dimensions, of course: height, up and down, width, left and right, depth, forward and backward, to describe the location of objects or things in our space and time. These are the dimensions of what we, of course, call 3D space. Now, the phenomenon of 3D or 3D space and time, as I just read, is quite conceptually easy to think of. We experience it every day. When we start to think of a fourth dimension or anything that deals with time, we're told by the physicists, the scientists, the smartest individuals that we are aware of, that time, of course, only moves forward, and therefore, we, by our physical, biological makeup, cannot actually see any dimensions other than the three-dimensional world in which we operate every day. Now, I don't want to get too heavy here, but if we just take this a little further, okay, what we have is Albert Einstein and his theory of relativity. In the macro world and universe, he tries to describe to us a place or an idea, or a formula that gives you an idea for everything that is happening and how these different things affect or are governed with that. So, on the other hand, here comes quantum physics. Don't get scared. We're not going to get into a science thing. I don't want anybody running out the door at this point. Okay, but here we have quantum physics, which is telling us everything at a smaller molecular atomic nature, okay? And they're saying, okay, well, this thing could be moving here. It could be a wave, or it could be a particle of light, or so forth, or sometimes both back and forth, and that these things are in flux, that they move. Now, the problem with these two theories and I'm going to get to it real quick. The problem with these two theories, both the quantum mechanics of things and Einstein's idea of relativity, is they're at direct differences, really, with one another. Plus, if one works, the other should. If this one works, then this one should somehow break down. Now, the smartest of our scientists tell us there could be up to 10 dimensions. We're only seeing 3. Okay. Now, this is where I feel comfortable, so you'll have to excuse my ignorance. Because of science, I have to say, I don't know that I could be, because I, to the best of my knowledge, have never experienced a portal. Okay. I've been told by scientists that in order to do something like that, the power that it would take to create it, well, we just don't have. Okay. So that if you're keeping score at home, sounds like portholes 0, science 1. Okay. But not so quick. Hold on. I'm going to play devil's advocate because I have the microphone and chair. I just told you I spent quite a bit of time telling you what our smartest people, our best minds, gentlemen like Stephen Hawking, okay, telling you about time, place, so on and so forth. I will say this on behalf of the room, the people who believe that they have experienced things. There's something dynamic about it. And I think the real question, the question that our moderator is asking is, could something like that exist? That is totally different than our core fact. But I will say this again, as devil's advocate. It's not a matter of, really, is it improbable? Maybe. Is it impossible? Which is, I believe, your question. Is it impossible? I don't know. I can't say. Why can't you say? Author tell me. Well, it's easy. Because I don't know all the variables of what we're talking about. Let's say, for example, to water this down and get me off the stage here, quit talking on time. What if, for example, there is a civilization that existed 10,000 years longer than we have? What could they do or what they couldn't? Where do these things travel from? Are they here on this planet? Or if you don't want to go onto that platform, I understand. But what if there's some type of anomaly that we can't detect? And it allows for this theory of things to happen. Although we may not accept it or believe it, there was also a time when we didn't believe in antimatter or dark matter. Yet there are pockets of it that exist in the universe. So my query to you is this. I'm not saying that it does happen or that it can happen. I'm saying there could be a probability. With that, I'll turn. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. That's a good point as well. All right, go ahead, Daniel. Did you need me to read the question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so the next question, I would like for you to please describe your own impression of what its invention is. You may begin by describing what it is and how entry or access is gained to a dimension.
Okay, with that, basically what information that I was going to present is just what Tony had stated. What I will do is tell you from personal experience. How many of you here are familiar with Kinzu Dam, Allegheny National Forest? How many of you are familiar with the magnetic ley lines, natural magnetic ley lines? They claim that wherever you have magnetic ley lines, the probability and possibility of portals is great. My experience, I'm a friend of mine, I won't mention his name, that lives up at Kinzu Dam. And I go up there several times a year We'll go hiking. We've had encounters with Bigfoot. We've casted multitude of Bigfoot prints. Several reports that people will witness a Bigfoot walking up to a tree, going into a crouched position, putting its hands up in front of its face, and dematerializing. There are a multitude of reports that Bigfoot possesses the capability of interdimensional travel by means of portals. I had a friend of mine that went up to Denny's, first name. I couldn't go, and he called, and he was bawling like a baby. And I said, Brian, what on earth is going on? And he's telling me that him and Denny went into this area. Denny was showing him different things that he has experienced at Kinzu Dam, and a portal opened. They're walking down a trail through the woods, and that trail is beat down just like this floor. And all at once, a real heavy ground fog came in. The wind picked up, blowing violently, and the scenery in front of them started to change. Now, this is hard to grasp. They turned to head back to where the parking lot was, and all they were looking at was dense vegetation, as though they were in the Amazon jungle. They turned back and looked the opposite direction, and they witnessed what looked like cave dwellings, ancient cave dwellings. Then he calmed Brian down, said, we're just going to stay here. Eventually this thing will close and we'll be back. Everything will be back to normal. And after about 40 minutes, that's exactly what happened. They went back to the car. Brian was so upset, then he took him back to his house. He packed up all his stuff and he left. Called me on the way home, and he, like I said, bawling like a baby. That following week, it was on a Wednesday, Brian came and picked me up, went up to Kinzu, Denny met us, and another friend of his by the name of Jim. And I took all kind of electronic measuring equipment with me, electromagnetometer, Geiger counter, and just a multitude of electronics. Got to the parking lot area. Brian is literally a grown man, crouched down on the floor behind the driver's seat. And he's arguing with Denny, leave the keys to the car, I'm not getting out. Denny said, what do you mean you're not getting out? He said, you leave the keys to the car, I'm not getting out. What if you guys don't come back? I said to Denny, well, while you guys are arguing, where's this at, Denny? He said, just head down that path, don't go too far. And I took off. Turned a couple of times, and I couldn't see the parking lot. I couldn't hear Denny and Brian arguing anymore. And I hollered out, I said, hey, Denny, how much further? Denny hollered, don't go any further. Stop right where you're at. I'm standing there, and I start pulling out my electronic equipment, my electromagnetometer, and all at once, this dense, heavy ground fog came in, thicker than any billowy cloud you'd see in the sky. Dead silence, almost like as if you were sucked into a vacuum. The only way I can describe it, you're opening your mouth trying to pop your ears. The wind blowing like crazy. And I'm standing there and start to do a sweep with the electromagnetometer. And about the time Jim came up on my left, then he came up on my right, and the needle on the meter started to come up like this and then drop back real slow. And they did that several times. And then all at once, wham, slammed so hard off the stop, I, holy crow, I hope it didn't wreck my meter. What the heck's going on? Then it started to sleep violently. I said to Jim, are there any underground electric lines here? And Jim said, Dan, I grew up in this area. You bring a backhoe in, you can dig to China. You're never going to find any electric lines. There are no electric lines overhead. Things got so bad, once the ground fog cleared up enough to where we could see where we were walking, we turned and headed back to the car. I wished I would have stayed because I firmly believe that was that portal starting to open. Another real quick incident, Denny and a friend of his, Then he would always check in, tell his wife, I'll check in wherever I have cell phone service. I will be home at a certain time. This particular time, Denny and his friend were up there. They parked the car, they go into this area. Apparently this portal opened up. Denny never reported home. 9 o'clock at night came, midnight came. Denny's or his wife's on the phone calling, the park people, calling the sheriff's department. Then he has a relative on the sheriff's department. He said, Nikki, we won't go looking for Denny if he went into this area until daylight. No one will go into this area until daylight. We just don't do it. That next morning, Denny and his friend are walking, and here comes the sheriff's patrol car. Said to Denny, Denny, I'll notify your wife, let her know that you and your buddy are okay. What in the hell are you doing here? And Denny said, I don't know. We can't find our way back to the car. And he started to tell the sheriff, his friend or relative, what had happened. And he told him, he said, you don't need to tell me anything. Let's get you back to your vehicle and get you home to your wife. Denny and his friend were 17 miles away from where their car was. The only way they could have got to where they were is either by boat, walk along the bank. They were all clear on the opposite side of the lake. And they have no explanation as to how or why they ended up there. Apparently they got caught into a portal and they teleported them or transported them to this area. And I've often told Denny, I'm supposed to be going up there second week of November, and we're going to go back up into this area. And I told Denny, I said, hey, I'm going to walk into this area. No, you're not. He actually takes a rope and ties a rope around your waist. And he said, it's just a precaution. There are so many things up there that are unexplainable. And this all happens in national parks. Fred mentioned missing, 411. All these disappearances happen in national parks. If you go into a national park, do not go alone. Always have someone with you. Always.
Okay, thank you for that, Daniel. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Terry. Did you need me to read the question?
When I think of dimensions, I think of parallel universes. They can also be called multiverses, alternate realities. And going back to the book that I read, Coevolution, which talked about a second Earth. That Earth or planet that they called, the name is Haven. And they talked about people, humans, us here on Earth. Those that are enlightened or vibrating at a higher frequency were moving to the second Earth, and those that were not enlightened or vibrating at a low frequency would remain on this Earth. I think a lot of vibrations and frequencies have a lot to do with moving through the dimensions and the portals. Like they previously had said about the creatures that come through the portals, dematerializing, materializing. I think that has a lot to do with the frequencies and going through the dimensions.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Terry. Aurora, did you need me to read the question?
No. For me, a dimension is another area of space in which a portal or vortex opens, allowing someone or something to move between inner and outer worlds or through timelines. Dimensions can be a singular format, two-dimensional, three-dimensional, or a tesseract, which is a fourth-dimensional aspect, often represented as a hypercube. The young adult book, Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle, gives a clear definition into each of these dimensional formats. There are other dimensions beyond fourth dimension as well. These dimensions are usually occupied by more higher advanced beings or sometimes darker beings. I've had experiences with those. A portal vortex is a doorway that opens up, allowing movement between dimensions and dimensional worlds. Dimensions may occur between inner and outer worlds, allowing movement between different worlds levels, as well as causing dimensional shifts between timelines. I've had my own experiences of understanding dimensions and shifting between timelines, such as going back in time and also during present time.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Now we are running a little bit short on time, so we're going to combine the next couple of questions. Now that we know what a dimension is, we're going to go ahead into that of interplanetary beings. One type of those beings is the men and women in black. They are known to come just like investigators and ask questions or wipe away memories of things that cannot be seen. In addition to that, there are telepathic entities who allegedly come and communicate solely from their mind to yours. The most famous of those was Indrid Cold, who appeared during the Mothman era. Now, we have heard stories of time travelers who are also alleged to come here to either watch or alter historical events. So I'm gonna, as stated, I'm gonna go ahead and combine the last two questions for your time constraints. Aurora, we're gonna start with you again this time. Now we're gonna go ahead and venture into that men and women in black. Are they actually interplanetary beings? What are they and what are they here for? In addition to that, we have the one with the telepathic entities. We want to answer that in the same way.
My first knowledge and recollections concerning the men and women in black began when I was around 7 years old. My mother made sure that I understood that if they ever showed up at our house, I was to run and hide as quickly as I could. She never explained to me why. She would never give me a reason why. She was just concerned and very fearful of them. She wasn't a woman to fear much, but she had a great fear of the men in black and often worried about them coming to our house. As an adult, from both my studies and some of my experiences, I would say that the men and women in black are interplanetary beings that work in tandem with our government. They lack a sense of humanity, and therefore their appearances, behaviors, and speech are often reported as odd and unusual. I believe that their main goal and objective is to maintain both control and secrecy of the inner and outer planetary beings that exist and work with our government. These men and women in black are known to be forceful in their demands to silence people. They can become very threatening. They will often wipe the memory of individuals as well as drain them of their energy, causing excessive tiredness and, in some cases, physical lameness that takes a while for the individual to recuperate. To answer the combined question, I do believe that telepathic entities are advanced beings that have accomplished utilizing their PSI, sensory perception abilities. In some cases, these beings are time travelers that have abilities beyond our human capacity at this time. They travel between dimensions or timelines as well as inner and outer space. I do believe that in faction of those are both good and evil. However, in many cases, these telepathic beings come here to guide us and alter historic events that may be known to them as causing catastrophic patterns within future timelines. I also feel and believe that they visit our Earth to evaluate the growth of the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of humanoids in the continued planetary experiment that was created many thousands of years ago on our planet. Our planet is considered the hard knock school of life, a junkyard dumping ground or zoo, as well as evolving humans that are shifting and awakening to their spiritual potential with the elevation of their frequency and vibration. From my own personal experiences, aliens, Bigfoot, dogmen, and other worldly beings such as the Fae have a different frequency and are able to maintain a telepathic connection. It is unfortunate that most of the human race has lost this ability. Once organized religion, science, and industrial mechanisms took over and helped to erase the human communication with nature. Since then, everything is now only remembered in our folklore, mythology, and fairy tales from around the world.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And Terry, did you need me to read the question?
I'm going to talk about my experience with a possible MIB or man in black. This happened in the 90s. Brian and I and a few friends attended a UFO lecture at a community college, and it was given by a former police officer. His name was Roger Meaner. He's now deceased. There was a mysterious gentleman in attendance who came in after the lecture had started, and everybody, got everybody's attention that okay, somebody came in late, but what, was mysterious was he was dressed in a long overcoat. It wasn't exactly black. I think it was tan, if I remember correctly. He had olive skin. He was tall and thin. He didn't say much, but he listened very carefully to what was going on. No one had seen him before or knew who he was. After the lecture, a group of us went to a nearby restaurant to continue the discussion of the lecture. The gentleman happened to join us. He wasn't invited, he just followed us. He was very mysterious, talked little, listened closely to what everyone was saying and talking about, and it was unnerving to say the least. Afterwards, he had left. The rest of us hung back to talk about the mysterious man, and everyone agreed that it was a very unusual experience. We surmised he was indeed an actual MIB or similar being. Not sure if he was from Earth or somewhere else. We never saw or heard from him again. And Roger, being at that time, I don't know if he was still a police officer at that time, but he did have his gun with him, and he was very paranoid about this visitor that came to his lecture. And regarding the beings that are telepathic, they communicate thought-to-thought communication in your mind. In cryptozoology, there are reports of Bigfoot having telepathic abilities, and there are opinions that Bigfoot may be alien or alien-related. Stories talk of the Greys being telepathic also. They are thought to be advanced, far superior than us humans. Other aliens, Nordics, also have we've been told or heard of them being telepathic, not using verbal words. And humans have lost abilities from the past. The machines do the thinking for us. We rely on technology more and more. We've lost touch with our latent abilities as human race and are no longer in touch with nature or Earth. And I think we can get that back. And regarding time travelers, entities, or aliens, are they us from the future, evolved, or are they a separate, different being? Will we ever know?
Thank you very much for that. All right, we're gonna go ahead and begin. Do you need to read the question?
No, that's okay. The men in black, that's a phenomena in itself, as well as the women in black. Supposedly, they're government agents or alien hybrids in dark suits who silence witnesses of unidentified UFO, UAP aircraft and interrogating them and threatening them and their families. I've had my own experiences with the so-called men in black. I can't say that for me it was a frightening experience. I've been threatened. My family's been threatened. You know, I've had multiple UFO sightings. 1982, I witnessed a massive triangular-shaped craft. Some friends of mine also witnessed it. The craft stopped directly above us. Openings in the bottom of the craft, two metallic spheres dropped down, bobbed up and down real slow simultaneously till those openings closed. One shot the spheres, one shot north, one shot south, the triangle, zigzag to the left, zigzag to the right, and in the blink of an eye, shot up and disappeared. I filled out a national questionnaire that was ran through a computer nationwide, and it was kicked out as a true unknown. I also had, talked with several newspapers and told them, what I had seen, what I had experienced, to find out that I started receiving threatening phone calls. Don't talk about it. Forget what you saw. All that did was just light a fire under my behind to make me want to expose it more. It's intimidation. I've literally have had Black Hawk helicopters hovering above the roof of my house. I have photographs. You can walk out and look up, count the rivets on the side of the Black Hawk, see the pilot looking down at you, and again, it's just intimidation tactics. I've had my telephone tapped. And again, I'm not going to quit. That's what they want me to do. As far as telepathic entities, every living being possesses the capability of being telepathic. We are all on planes of existence, some a little higher than others. And as you climb each plane, you become more enlightened to where eventually all of this will make more sense to you. And I truly believe that people, human beings that are capable of being able to communicate telepathically, again, it's a topic our government does not want us to talk about amongst ourselves. But why are the world governments so actively involved in telepathic tests? There's something to it. And again, it's sad that the world governments want to withhold this information, dumbing down of a civilization. And that's exactly what our governments are doing to us. And hopefully the day will come where we will all be much better and be able to overcome the lies that our government has put upon us.
Thank you so much for that, Daniel. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Tony. Do you need me to read the question?
We're good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, folks, Men in Black, slippery slope indeed. I prepared this statement. I don't have any direct contact or never have with the Men in Black, nor do I want to, after listening to my colleagues here. Men in Black feature prominently in UFO, ufology, UFO folklore, and fan fiction in the 50s and in the 1960s. Ufologists adopted a conspiratorial mindset and began fearing they would be subject to organized intimidation and retaliation for discovering the truth of UFOs. Give you a real brief history. I know time is of the essence. The first acknowledged point that I could detect was back in 1947. Of course, there was the case of Harold Dahl, Maury Island incident. Most people in here probably know of that incident. Later, there was argument, debunked, so on and so forth. Ufologist Albert K. Bender claimed he was visited by men in dark suits who threatened and warned him not to continue investigating UFOs. You may recall, folks, Mr. Bender had started the International Flying Saucer Bureau. He did so for like a year, I believe it was 52 to 53. And then that was suddenly terminated after he received a visit from these three men who warned him not to speak of anything regarding UFOs. Now, ufologist John Keel wrote, of course, Mothman in 1975, both on Mothman prophecies. Ufologist John Keel claimed to have encounters with MIBs and referred to them as demonic supernaturals with dark skin, and he described them, as dark-skinned and all exotic facial features. According to ufologist Jerome Clark, reports of Men in Black represent experiences that don't seem to have occurred in the world of conscious reality. So we have a bunch of people fighting back and forth of what exactly the definition of these rather nefarious folks are. One time, John Keel argued that some MIB encounters could be explained as entirely mundane events perpetrated through folklore. That's a little something I know about. I write about folklore. But in his book, again, Mothman Prophecies in 1975, he describes a late night outing in 1967 where he was actually mistaken for an MIB while trying to search for a phone to call a tow truck. Okay. In an article by Gray Barker, my friend, the myth maker, John C. Sherwood, claims that in the 60s, at age 18, he cooperated with Gray Barker and urged him to develop a hoax, if you will, with the MIB, if you will, at the center of this. Barker called them, or often referred to them as just simply black men, three mysterious UFO inhabitants who silenced Sherwood's pseudonym identity, which was Dr. Richard Pratt. So in short, the Men in Black play many different roles depending upon which the observer decides to accept. You probably could ask yourself 5 different ufologists what they believe the men in black to be exactly. You would probably receive 5 different answers. There, of course, is a reason for that. You assume sometimes see in some of these examples, they play the part of enforcers, the part of intimidators. They can show up on the most unlikely of places. I'm sure if you're not familiar, all you have to do is turn on the TV. They talk off, there was a program on the cable TV about the NIMS, her battle group, and the whole Tic Tac incident. And at one point, they say that these men somehow gained access, took the audio, visual equipment, everything off of carrier. Now, I come from a Navy family. That's not an easy task by anybody. So what or how that transpired or how these men entered that, got to that carrier, took that information is anybody's guess. Some claim they act as if they are androids or have disturbing physical attributes. Are they merely part of folklore? Are they something else entirely? The government in general acts as if they don't exist, when asked by witness to produce identification, these agents of darkness do so. However, upon trying to verify their credentials, they're never heard of in the government agencies. In fact, the only thing more mysterious than their sudden appearance and abrupt disappearance in a situation is their purpose. It would seem as clandestine as their persona. These agents of darkness often confuse people with their bizarre behavior patterns, often leaving the individuals confused of what had transpired. In closing, real quick, as again, I understand time is of the essence. I'm sure Mr. Saluga might mention Indrid Cold, which seems to be one of the most interesting and enigmatic people related to the MIB. So with that, I will close. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Fred, did you need me to repeat the question?
Yeah, I can answer it. Okay. Okay, when I first got into UFO, this was back in the 60s, the MIBs were actually dressed like they were cadavers. I don't know if anybody ever remembers that. It's like they actually came out of the grave. And they have lipstick on, they have powder stuff all over their face. I mean, just like they came out of the grave. There was a lot of UFO reports back in of UFOs actually hovering over graveyards, shooting lights in. A couple of them was really big ones, was in West Virginia. So again, we really don't know what these people are, but anyhow, throughout history, the men in black have been associated with strange and otherworldly phenomena. While some believe that they are government agents tasked with suppressing information about UFOs and extraterrestrial encounters, others argue that they are beings from another realm of dimension. Those who subscribe to the theory that the MIBs, otherworldly beings, believe they possess supernatural abilities and have a mysterious origin. According to this belief, the MIBs are not human, but rather entities that exist outside of our understanding of reality. Real quick story here. I was a 12 back in the 70s. We used to have a guy who was studying to be a psychologist. He actually had his bachelor's, was working on his master's, and he was the dispatcher. So every week he'd come in with UFO books, and I'd sit there and laugh at him. I never heard about that UFO blah, blah, blah. One day he came in, he didn't have no UFO books. And I said, Joe, what happened? What are your UFO books? He said, well, I don't want to talk about it. And then he finally told me that he's seen a UFO landing, and within, he said, 6 hours, 3 MIBs was at his house. He talked about they killed his parents. The guy today is a PhD in he used to work with people, he doesn't know more. He will not talk about Men in Black. So some characteristics of Men in Black are strange and unsettling appearance. Witnesses often describe them as having pale gray skin, older oceanless eyes, and an overall aura of unease. Some even claim that Men in Black are robotic or non-human quality to their movement. Another aspect is their otherworldly being. There's little to no intimate details about the individuals that are encounters with UFOs. Witnesses report that the men in black possess knowledge that they could not have attained through conventional means, suggesting a level of supernatural insight or surveillance. Furthermore, unlike government agents who typically operate within the defined legal framework, the men in black seem to operate outside boundaries of human law. Witnesses report instances where the men in black displayed extraordinary powers such as mind control, the ability to manipulate objects and alter the objects around them. Some proponents of the other theory argue that men in black are interdimensional beings that can travel between realities and dimensions. They believe these beings are monitoring human activity, intervening when necessary to maintain balance in between phenomena. However, it is important to note that the theory of the men in black as otherworldly beings is not effective and lacks concrete evidence. Skeptics argue that the men in black phenomenon can be explained by psychological factors, misinterpretation of events, and even deliberate hoaxes. When they were talking about Point Pleasant, when the men in black came down to Point Pleasant, one of them actually tried to drink Jello. I mean, he got Jello and actually picked it up and tried to drink it. Another one had a pen. They pushed the button on the pen, he did it for a half hour. He couldn't believe what the hell it was. He's looking at it, wow, this is and half of them got the same thought here. So I believe, and like I say, after when I heard about them being, cadavers, I actually believe they are. Some of them actually are interdimensional beings, and I believe the biggest majority of them are reputation. And telepathic entities refer to the concept of individuals who believe they can communicate through thoughts and feelings across spoken words. This idea is often affiliated with fictional, and I would use the word fictional. Every time the government gets into something, it's fictional, which involves the transmission of information from one mind to another without the use of human sensory channels. While many people believe they possess telepathic ideas, the scientific consensus indicates that telepathy is largely unverified and considered pseudoscience. Experiments designed to test telepathy have helped produce a consistent result. The mainstream scientists argue that there is no empirical evidence for the existence of telepathic entities. Now, when you get to UFOs, okay, alien, extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call them, they use telepathy. I've never heard of an alien actually talking. They go through telepathy. And I believe this is really in Bigfoot. That's why we say Bigfoot is alien, because he uses telepathy.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, does anybody have any questions? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so mankind, as we know it today, I'm gonna say, my understanding is showed up 400,000 years ago. Earlier earlier versions date back to as far as 4 million years ago. My question is there any evidence in ancient artifacts, is there any evidence that an abduction that points to abductions beyond, the recent history, going back 100,000 years?
Okay, anybody on the panel wanna go ahead and answer that one?
Yeah, well, there are cave drawings in the Nazca lines that show, space people, somebody wearing like what would be an astronaut's helmet. And the Nazca lines are thought to be landing strips.
Yeah, my son and I are avid watchers of ancient aliens.
Oh, yeah.
So we know all about those drawings, but I guess I was specifically
You say something like
asking
100,000 years.
abductions.
So supposedly, back in biblical times, there are paintings that depict a UFO, and there are accountings of abductions that happened back during biblical times, and possibly even before that.
Okay. The other question, We have 2 dogs. And they're pretty close. And I swear they do communicate something. So when you indicated that the human response to technology, they made that sort of has made us rely less on our innate abilities, and more on technological advances by man. Is it possible that earliest communicators don't?
I would have to say that yes, at one point in time in our evolution, prior to where we are now, we did have the capability of telepathic communication. And animals do, communicate telepathically with one another, between each other. When in between like species like a dog to a cat, to a dog, horse, what have you. And they can communicate as well with humans if we take time to listen.
Anybody else?
Yes.
I think she was next.
So a few days ago, I heard the astrophysicist Hugh Ross speak about UAPs, etc. Yes, a little background is he was an atheist. He is now a Christian. So that in and of itself, many scientists in that field are atheists. One thing, a couple of things that he said, one of the things he talked about was that a percentage of UFO crash sites, etc., show evidence that something happened, such as a depression in the ground, melted asphalt, things like that. But there's no sign of any kind of debris or any kind of spacemen or anything like that. So he posits put forth a theory that possibly these spacecrafts or whatever the people see, because they do things that are not within physics. You see ships that go 1,000 miles an hour. They start at one point, they go to another point, no sonic boom, things like that, that are not explained in our world. So he does posit that these sightings in creatures are interdimensional, because how would they get one place to the other, etc. But he also posits that they are possibly demons, because many of the people who have experiences with these things, especially like abductions and things, they experience bad things that happen to them. You talk about the examinations, things like that, or events happen that are not good. And that is one of the reasons he feels it is possible that these are demons, because they obviously could be interdimensional. Anybody have any feelings about that or any insights?
That was very well said. Okay, I'll put on a folklore hat for a moment. There is many different things, many different aspects of folklore belief as well as religious beliefs. One of the questions that our moderator had was actually about men in black, and I think the second part was women in black. Okay, women in black show up also black clothing, pale white skin, dark hair, very dark eyes. Sometimes they're said to possess ESP, give dire warnings to people. In folklore and the belief as well as religion, anything that usually shows up with black smoke, black individual, shadow people, if you're familiar with that concept, these things are supposed to all come or be possessed by the devil, evil, or anything related to the destruction of the human soul. So where does that start and where does that end? That's a real fuzzy area, but I can tell you that that's probably the aspect where this individual is trying
to go with it.
One of the other things that he said that I thought was rather interesting is that I lost my train of thought, but he talked about on my head, the train left the station.
We'll come back to you if you want to take a moment to think about it. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question about the telepathy. Are you able to tell the other person has telepathy ability or psychic ability to reward that and make you sense the person having energy? And also, are you able to visualize the fourth dimension too?
It depends on the individual. Yes, I can see energy, the auras around people. I try not to because I don't like to invade other spaces, but there are times that it does happen. You can recognize when someone has gifts and abilities. It's a natural response. For instance, like in my family, we did on both my mother and father, both their sides of the family. We did have certain extrasensory perception between us and telepathic abilities between us. People can recognize each other for the gifts that they do have. Did that answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
To further your question, if you look at alien abduction, if you look at an alien abduction and you look at a satanic ritual abuse, they're actually almost the same thing. That's where they get the belonging from the activity.
Well, he did briefly bring up the mutilations,
Yeah.
and how surgical they are, precision-wise. But I did remember what I was thinking of. But one of the things that I thought was interesting that he talked about throughout time, like let's say many years ago, and I'm not sure how this fits in, but he mentioned it. Like people saw leprechauns, people saw maybe dirigibles that weren't there, or things like that, or but he also talks about how these, over time, the aliens get beyond or into our technology. So whatever the technology is now. I guess at one time the aliens were telling people, the beings were telling people that they came from the far side of the, well, that, we know that's true. Then they started saying, well, they were from Mars. Well, we know what Mars is like, and Venus is like, they couldn't possibly, anything couldn't possibly live there. So it just seems that if the theory is true that they are demons, then, they keep up with the technology and keep going beyond like our human knowledge, which I thought was rather interesting.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Tim?
I was just wondering, you brought up earlier about the 50s going into the 60s and 70s about abductions basically getting meaner.
Mhm.
Do you think it has any connection to the space race and just like the distrust with the Vietnam War and just things we've only learned about in the past decade or two of
Good question.
the CIA and some other dark government stuff?
I wish that last part I couldn't quite pick it out.
I was just wondering, like, connection, like CIA, dark government, because we know some of the abductions are not done by aliens.
Right.
Right. So,
See,
and I was just wondering if since you brought it up, getting meaner from the 50s to like the 70s, just everything else that was going on at that time. I mean, we're literally starting to mess with space travel, and so was all other countries. Just wondering if there's a connection to it.
There could be a possibility, and I'm going to let this gentleman to my right answer in that moment. What I meant by this statement, which I think you understood perfectly, was things have changed.
Mm-hmm.
In my book, UFOs Across Pennsylvania, I've actually interviewed in one of the chapters both of these gentlemen and their experiences because they have done so much in this field. Mr. Hagman to my left, actually, I posed a query, a question directly to him. What do you think separated 1973, which is known as a banner year for activity, out of the few men, well, I should say few, it was over a couple dozen investigators. The man to my left and the man to the right were the first two men that said, well, there was a lot of things going on then in 1973. Great nuclear threat, political unrest, war, a lot of different programs that were being initiated, some of which clandestinely by our government, which I'm sure Mr. Saluga could expound upon. So to answer your question, why not? Yeah, it could have also led to the aggressiveness of this, of their behavior patterns, because it was no longer like in the 50s or 60s where sometimes it was a flyover or something being viewed. Then you had the encounters, and some of the encounters, like Betty and Barney Hill, started to become a little bit more intrusive. Let's just say, let's put it nicely, intrusive. By the 1970s, you know, you have things, Travis Street, you have all kinds of different scenarios, okay? And these things seem to have grown progressively darker. Go ahead.
I think the CIA is involved in this stuff up there now. They recently did a study, they found out that, the CIA is using alien abduction materials in their, post-war stuff down in South America. And, a lot of the cases that you're looking at now, it's the my labs, as I told you earlier. It's military people pretending like they're actually alien. They take the people, they take them in, and then they do MKO for them, put them under mind control, and they run. And this is one of the big things going on with the government right now. And I know Dan's probably going to tell me to go to hell in a minute. But one of the big things coming up right now is Barney and Betty Hill was on the top. But that was actually an MKO for experiment, because Betty was white and Barney was black. And when you really start getting into it, you look at the person that did their psychologist, yeah, he was CIA. The whole thing was based on a CIA thing. And it is very possible, I don't know, I mean, I didn't really study that case, but I've been reading that quite a bit now, even on the CIA thing. So it's very possible.
Also, you want to take into consideration the aggression of the world governments. You know, back when the pact was made with the gray species, you know, you share your technologies with us, and in turn, we'll let you experiment on human beings. And then eventually they said, screw you. And they took off and went in their own direction. The government quick to shooting down these unknown craft because they want the technology. You know, what government in this world wouldn't want to have the superiority of being able to be number one? So I think aggression has a lot to do with the escalation of why things have turned and are so bad.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, go ahead, Jamie.
Well, my question is, good job in this question about the science and the science of the my question is, if you see whistleblowers come forward currently now, changing the whole methodology and people having access to cameras and media being there everywhere, do you think that we're going to see more and more people talking about abductions and about UFO sightings? Because my wife and I belong to CP5 movement, and part of that is there's different levels of contact. So CP5 is human initiated. So if you have people around the globe that are human initiated contact teams, you think they're going to see it?
Absolutely. You know, we're not going to get the answers from our government. That's why you have these whistleblowers now coming forward, because they don't like what they see. They don't like what they know. And unless we deal with it and get it under control, every single human being on this planet is gonna suffer from it.
Okay, were there any more questions? Any, from the live stream?
Nothing from the live stream.
Oh.
So everybody enjoyed it though. Everybody.
Oh, that's good. Happy to hear it. If there's any comments you want to add, this is your chance. Now, we do have a couple giveaways that I like to do with these panel events. The first one is going to be based on luck. And it is, now just please be careful whenever you check underneath your seat. I don't want anybody tripping and falling, but one of your seats has a lucky abductee paper underneath it. And you would be the winner of a, so if it's the seat next to you, then you can still be the winner. I think I do that.
No, I think.
No, it's a big.
Oh, they're lucky, the lucky abductee. And I have a present for you, and then whoever was most engaged and asked the most questions, panelists, do you have an opinion on who that might be? You think it was her?
I would say.
Okay, great, you just wanted to as well, and they glow blue in the dark. So, all right, well, I want to thank everybody for coming today, and I'll also let you know that there are tables here. You're welcome to stop by, talk to everyone, and, you know, pick up some merchandise and things like that. We do have a panel coming up on April 18th of 2026. I know it's very far away, but it will be on cryptids. So we will talk about Bigfoot, Mothman, Dogman, all of those crazy creatures. Thank you all very much.
All right, guys, that's it for today. And I have a show with Tommy Edwards tonight. You guys can still hear me. I'll be back on tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you guys then with Tommy Edwards. I'm signing off.